This right next to me is a Holden Monaro CV8, the third generation of Australia's muscle car, and under the bonnet is an LS1 Corvette engine sending power to the rear wheels. So it's pretty much everything an Australian car enthusiast desires. I'm also going to expose some of the drawbacks with this generation, but on that note, there are a lot of good things to talk about. So in this review, I'm going to cover everything you need to know. Let's get to it. Let's start this video talking about a brief overview about the Monaro. So the Monaro nameplate goes back in time from 1968 to 1977, and there have been 3 generations of the Monaro coupe. The first covering the HK, HT and HQ series, and secondly the HQ and HJ series. And then thirdly, in 1998 at the Sydney Motor Show, Holden then unveiled the coupe concept. And then finally, after 25 years of absence, the Monaro made a return in 2001 for this third generation, which made it up to production until 2006, with a choice between a 4-speed automatic or a 6-speed manual. And this was based off the VX Commodore, which was a midlife update to the VT. And finally, optional extras included 7 external colours and 4 colours for the leather seats, and finally a wide choice of cluster colours to pick from. And the Monaro was a huge success for General Motors as they exported this model series around the world. So in America, for example, the Monaro was badged as the Pontiac GTO, as well as exported to the UK badged as the Vauxhall Monaro. And of course, HSV had their take, producing models such as the LE, GTO, GTS and the Coupe 4 all-wheel drive, and many other special editions. Right, let's now move on to the design. So the colour of this car is finished off in Phantom Micra, and in regards to the design itself, this shares a similar design theme to the VX Commodore, on which the Monaro is based on. So you get front projector halogen headlights, as well as these fog lamps down below, air vent down below as well, additional side skirt treatment, and an air vent up the top here with a Holden badge. And if we have a look at the Monaro from the side, as you can see, this particular version sits on 18-inch alloy wheels, and this is the updated wheel design, whereas the earlier variants of the Monaro used to look like this. And looking further towards the side, you get the same mirrors from the VT Commodore, and including the same door handles. In addition to that, you also get ventilated discs all round, 2 piston caliper setup at the front, along with a single piston caliper setup at the rear. And finally, the wheels themselves are wrapped in Pirelli tyres. And now moving towards the rear design of the Monaro, so this third generation features the same taillight design as the VX Commodore, and if we look lower down, 2 chrome exhaust tips. And in addition to that, there is also a third brake light up the top here. There's also a Holden badge in the center, and finally some of that side skirt treatment. Okay, moving on to the cabin. So before you climb inside, this Monaro has a remote central locking key, and the key slots into the ignition, firing up that big V8. And if we move on to the cabin design, as some of the enthusiasts might already know, this third generation Monaro is based off the VX Commodore. So when it launched back in 2001, this is what the interior looked like. However, this example being a 2004, this new model receives the cleaner looking dashboard layout from the VY Commodore update. And if we move on to the materials and build quality, up the top here, it's all vinyl. And even when you look lower down, that is also vinyl. You also get this suede material on the lower sections, and that also extends onto the doors. And on the top of the doors, again, more vinyl. Even when you look lower down, soft padding on the doors where you rest your elbow. However, in the center, it is hard plastic. And even when you look up the top here as well. And finally, this generation Monaro receives a 4-spoke leather wrap steering wheel that is complemented by this red stitching and these aluminium inserts. And moving on to comfort, the steering offers manual tilt and reach adjustment, and this front driver's seat also offers 8-way power adjustment with memory, and specific to the passenger, you also get electric adjustment. And both these front row seats offer manual lumbar support, and they're also finished off in black leather, and overall they're very comfortable and supportive. As you can see, they've got these large side bolsters. And finally, towards the center, this car also receives dual zone climate control. And moving on to technology, as you can see, you've got physical buttons for the radio, and there are also the shortcut buttons on the steering wheel. And specific to the CV8, this receives a 260 watt 10 speaker sound system. You also get a CD player, AM and FM radio, and you also get an inbuilt 6 CD changer towards here as well. And if we move on to the center cluster, as you can see, this has been optioned with the red cluster. And if you look lower down, you've got a trip computer, and using these buttons here, you can cycle through the different menus, looking at odometer, trip distance, average speed, consumption, and finally, there is also an inbuilt stopwatch for the racetrack. And if we move on to safety, down the bottom here, you've got traction control, along with ABS braking, emergency brake assist. You get cruise control, and there are also side airbags, an airbag for the passenger, and a driver's airbag inside the steering wheel. And if we move on to drive modes, you've got a power button, so that changes it from eco to power. And finally, storage. So on the doors, you've got decent door bin pockets that can fit a small bottle of water. In the center, a decent sized console that also reveals a shelf for your CDs. There's also a 12-volt socket, and towards this side, a spot for your coins. And towards the center, you've got additional storage along with your electric window switches. And over here is a section for, I don't know what you would expect to put in there, as well as some additional storage down here. And if you pop these out, you've got two cup holders that come out, and that could probably hold a small bottle of water. And finally, the glove box is a decent size and big enough for your compact 2004 street directory. Okay, moving on to the back seat. So to climb inside, you just pull on that lever, push it forward, and the seat automatically retracts forward. And from what we can see, once I'm inside, I've got plenty of knee room. Toe room is also pretty good. However, headroom is a little bit tight, and that glass is quite hot thanks to the sun. But space-wise, for a coupe, it is pretty large. And in addition to that, there are also these map pockets. You get a light up the top here, directional air vents, and down the bottom, a little bit of storage. Okay, let's move on to storage at the back. So to open up the boot lid, you have to open up the glove box, push a little button, and that of course opens this section. So as you can see, the Monaro has 370 litres of boot capacity, which makes it large enough for 2 large suitcases. So it's pretty much just as spacious as a Commodore saloon. And in addition to that, this car also features a space saver spare wheel. Now, when you're buying a Monaro, what do you expect to see in terms of the service history and factory literature? Well, as you can see in this next scene, I've put out all those items, including manuals, owner's logbooks, the service history. You even get a small metal box, and when you open it, it reveals a letter from Holden saying that the new Monaro that sits in your driveway is a result of a dedicated design and engineering team that have produced in record time a truly world-class vehicle, one that all Australians can be proud of. And also in that box is a Monaro keyring. Let's now move on to the powertrain. So under the bonnet features the same engine like what you would find in a Corvette, and it is a front-mounted 5.7 litre 16-valve pushrod V8, and this is paired to a 4-speed automatic transmission, and all of the power is sent to the rear wheels, and the CV8s as standard received a limited slip differential. It's also worth mentioning that this generation Monaro is based off the VX Commodore. However, the Monaro weighs just over 1,600 kilograms, and in addition to some of the changes Holden have made, the Monaro received sport suspension, revised springs, a performance exhaust, and this is what that sounds like. The Monaro also received a slight power increase for 2004, according to Holden's spec guide, which means this 5.7 litre V8 produces 235 kilowatts, 465 newton meters of torque, and 0 to 100 is in 5.7 seconds. So the first thing you are going to notice when you do set off, there's a lot of torque, so it's like an on and off switch with the accelerator. So that means if you're not careful, you can quite easily spin the wheels, as the Monaro is very tow happy. But thanks to those Pirelli tyres, there's actually a lot of grip at the rear wheels. I haven't really felt like the car lost any balance, but if you really wanted to, you can push this traction control button, hit the accelerator pedal, and you're pretty much going to your destination sideways. So this is a traditional muscle car in terms of how it drives. And in terms of the suspension, it is on the firm side, but as you can see, considering that the underpinnings are quite basic, it does a really good job at tackling uneven road surfaces. Inside the cabin, it's quite refined and quiet for this type of vehicle. This also has an 11-meter turning circle radius, so driving around doing a U-turn, it's quite good. And whilst the steering wheel is nice and responsive for this type of car, it isn't as direct as an E46 M3 or even a CLK 55 AMG for that matter. And if we just dial up the revs, and mind you, when you do put your foot down, you do build up a bit of speed, so Yeah, you've got to be careful about losing your license. And if I just swap it into power, see what that does. It makes a really nice noise. And in regards to fuel consumption, Holden claims this Monaro should be able to achieve around 13 litres per 100, whereas I've achieved, actually I'll just check on this trip computer, 17.3 litres per 100. So my driving impressions out of the way, let's now wrap up with a verdict. So what is my final verdict on the 2004 Holden Monaro? Well, for the Holden or classic muscle car enthusiasts, this is a car that you definitely should consider because the value of these are going up and it definitely feels very unique to drive. But as always, let me know what you think of my verdict down in the comment section below. And if you gained value from this video, of course, give it a like, share, subscribe, and of course, I will see you in the next film. Thanks for watching.